present our speaker, Marina Miner from California University. She's presenting a joint work, as I understood, with Pengshan, who is speaking the next. And the topic is about Belt and Road Initiative, in what extent expansion of that program affects social cohesion and institutional trust in Kyrgyzstan. So our technical team works to make sure that she's connected.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me and see the slides okay?
Not yet the slides, we can hear you. I think
Okay.
our technical team is working to make sure that your slides are visible, but not, yeah, now.
Okay, well, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here, although I wish I was there in person in Bishkek. But I'm really excited to be part of this awesome conference. The Life in Kyrgyzstan survey has motivated a lot of this work, and yeah, it's great to be following Philipp's awesome presentation. So I'll get started as soon as my slides are up for everyone.
We see your slides, Marika. You, I think, can go. You have about 15 minutes.
Okay, that's perfect. All right, hello everybody. I am Marika. I am here in Davis, California, at the University of California here, and I'm presenting this project that I've been working on with Pengshan, who is there in person, luckily. And our project is about the effect of China's Belt and Road Initiative on civic participation in Kyrgyzstan. So the Belt and Road Initiative is a global infrastructure project launched by the Chinese government in 2013 to connect China to Europe through Asia. The BRI, this is a centerpiece of China's recent foreign and economic policy, increasing China's political and economic influence around the world. The project offers big economic benefits to countries receiving investments, improving economic conditions and boosting physical transportation infrastructure. But in addition to these economic benefits, the BRI holds significant implications for the social and political dynamics in host countries and countries that are receiving this investment. So in Kyrgyzstan, there's been some pushback. BRI investments are often coupled with the influx of Chinese migrant workers brought in to work on BRI projects, which has inflamed some anti-Chinese sentiment in Kyrgyzstan. There's been demonstrations calling for a reduction of Chinese investment, the denial of passports for Chinese citizens, and bans on intermarriage between Kyrgyz and Chinese. So what I'm focusing on here are some of the consequences of the Belt and Road Initiative, but we're going to start with the positive, the benefits that could come from this foreign investment into Kyrgyzstan. So first, the BRI offers to boost local economies. It can offer employment opportunities to local workers, and it can build up the infrastructure and the transportation in Kyrgyzstan. However, there are also some drawbacks that could come from the Belt and Road Initiative. These are heightened inequality and social conflict. So there's some inequality stemming from the unequal distribution of benefits of the BRI. And then there's also could be social conflict resulting from the arrival and contact between host communities and Chinese workers. Next, the implementation of the Belt and Road Initiative doesn't always adequately consider the negative environmental consequences, and the results of the Belt and Road Initiative sometimes don't match up with local expectations about what the Belt and Road Initiative would bring them, right? It's not matching the economic boost or the job opportunities that they expected. And then there's also political grievances. So there's a perceived erosion of local autonomy, and concerns that the Chinese government or the Kyrgyz government is prioritizing foreign interests over local needs, and then some lack of transparency regarding the implementation of these projects, and concerns about corruption arising from the distribution of BRI benefits. So the second core part of this project is looking at civic participation and how the Belt and Road affects civic participation in Kyrgyzstan. We focus on this because civic participation is an important component of democracy. It's an indicator of a vibrant civil society. And civic participation encompasses a range of activities. So this can be things like voting in elections, community involvement, like membership and participation in political and civic organizations. And then what we're focusing on here, right, is civic participation can also be influenced by local economic, social, and political dynamics. So in addition to looking at the overall effects of the Belt and Road on civic participation, we want to know how this is affecting this, like what is linking BRI exposure to levels of civic participation in Kyrgyzstan. So in this project, we focused on 3 potential causal mechanisms that are driving this relationship. The first is economic conditions. So economic development can impact civic participation as improved standards of living, higher incomes, enhanced employment opportunities should motivate individuals to engage more actively in civic and political activities. However, there's also a flip side. Unrealized economic benefits can lead to political frustrations, and job losses can reduce individual perceived efficacy for participating in politics. Next, political trust. Negative perceptions of BRI projects and concerns about corruption relating to the implementation and distribution of benefits from the BRI can harm political trust and lead to reduced motivation to participate in politics. And then finally, civic identity resulting from changes in economic conditions and political trust, as well as contact with these Chinese migrant workers. This can reshape individual identities, leading them to place less importance on their civic identity, on their citizenship, which then can reduce their incentives to participate in civic life. So we're looking at the overall effects of the Belt and Road Initiative on civic participation, as well as the relationship, the way that the relationship works, right? Like what links these two things. So the way that we do this, the way we test our theories about how these things are related is we implement a 2-stage difference in difference design. We use this geolocated data set of Chinese overseas development finance to identify who is exposed to the Belt and Road Initiative. And so there are 9 major BRI projects that occur in Kyrgyzstan. So we look at exposure across these different projects, and we measure exposure at these different distance levels. So individuals living 10, 25, and 50 kilometers away from one of these BRI projects. Next, one of the reasons we're all here together, right? We use this Life in Kyrgyzstan, this great survey, which gives us a lot of ways to measure these things that we're interested in. And so we figure out the respondents from the LIK survey, if they're exposed or not, using their SOATO ID, which is geolocated, so we can see if they are near one of these BRI projects. And then we use mainly data from the 2013 and 2016 waves of the LIK survey because those allow us to look at attitudes before and after these projects. So this shows the distribution of the LIK respondents that we have and if they were exposed and at what level to BRI projects. So you can see those black lines show where the Belt and Road projects are in Kyrgyzstan. And then the pink dots are LIK respondents that are within 10 kilometers. The green is 25 and the blue is 50. All right, so what do we find? So first, the sort of big thing I want you to remember from this talk is that overall we find that exposure to the Belt and Road Initiative reduces civic participation. So you can see that people who lived near these projects had reduced civic participation between the 2 survey waves compared to those that were not exposed to these projects. But now we want to know why. How do these things relate to each other? So this is the like big display of our results. So you can see here that there is a negative direct relationship, right? Like I showed you before, between exposure to the Belt and Road and civic participation. People that are exposed have lower levels of participation. But it looks like it works through these 3 mechanisms. So first, BRI exposure leads to worsened economic conditions, and it lowers trust in community leaders and reduces the importance that people place on their civic citizenship identity. While those 3 factors actually increase civic participation when we don't consider exposure, because exposure to the BRI is reducing these things, it is also indirectly reducing civic participation by reducing these factors. Yeah, I'm not sure if the numbers kind of are coming across clearly, but you can see BRI exposure, the negative coefficients, and then when you have these 3 factors, they're positively influencing civic participation. So in words, I'll tell you again. So what we find is that overall, exposure to the Belt and Road Initiative is associated with lower levels of civic participation, and that this relationship is mediated by worsening economic conditions, harming political trust, and reducing the importance of civic identity. And so this is really important. I think it's really interesting to see how these large foreign investment projects are actually impacting host communities and affecting and reducing an important component of democratic life in countries like Kyrgyzstan that are receiving these investments. All right, I think I was under 15 minutes. Thank you so much. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Marika. Fascinating. I think it's really a case when you use different sources of data, and we are pleased you are using LIK data. Definitely, there are many questions regarding data. How did you kind of aggregate, for example, what is civic participation or what is economic conditions? That could be maybe a bit clarified. But also my big question is about this attribution. In what extent you think people know that this is a part of Belt and Road Initiative, and in what extent it kind of changes their behavior? That could be interesting for you to a bit elaborate whether in what extent it's purely causal, attributable to BRI investments, but maybe there are other effects in place that also affect civic participation. So in that extent, maybe from both sides, there could be different measurements taken to make sure that you are really finding this finding in a way. That's probably already a question from my side, but I open floor to other questions from the audience. Not yet, Marika, you can proceed with my questions then.
Okay, yeah, great.
Participation, economic conditions, attribution.
Yeah, so first on the data that we used, for these measures, we're using responses to the LIK survey. So civic participation is an aggregation of a bunch of different questions that are asked in LIK, and they have to do with things like, do you attend community meetings? Are you part of civic organizations or cultural clubs, things like that. So it's sort of a broader measure that looks at overall what is the level of engagement that people are having in civic life. There are really interesting sort of heterogeneous effects there, right? So we can look at not only this sort of broad level of participation that I presented to you, but in the paper we show, okay, if we look more deeply at, how their participation in politics, right? Voting versus in cultural clubs or things like that, that you can sort of disaggregate and also look at those effects, which if you maybe look at the paper, it'll be really interesting to see, although we have this overall negative effect on civic participation, you can also see some interesting heterogeneous effects in the type of participation that is going on. And then for attribution, I think this question is really important. So this is the thing that we present, right, is overall this exposure to BRI seems to reduce civic participation. But how is that happening, right? Why are these projects resulting in that? And so this is something we're trying to get at by looking at these different mechanisms, right? By seeing, okay, well, is it actually that where these BRI projects are, people are dissatisfied with their economic conditions, or they actually lose job opportunities? Or is it where these BRI projects are, there are changes in political trust, right? People have different perceptions of the ability of their leaders to affect change and their ability of themselves to be effective political actors. And then civic identity, right? So is it where BRI projects are, is that changing individual identities in the way that they see themselves? And then that is in turn affecting their willingness and ability to participate in politics. So these are sort of the things that we're using to try to drive at, how is this relationship working? Why are we seeing this effect? I think that's like the key interesting thing here is not just, okay, we have the BRI and we have this outcome, but why, right? And so when we see this in other places, we see other kinds of foreign investment or investment into Kyrgyzstan from other countries. Would we see the same things? Knowing these sort of causal relationships is really going to help us understand more broadly how these relationships work. Are there other questions in the meantime
Marika,
or after?
Any other questions from the audience? Doesn't look so, but maybe I add one more.
Yeah.
The question is definitely the evidence on effect of BRI worldwide is probably quite limited, and I assume you're in forefront in a way bringing evidence, micro level data. But I assume there is some evidence already in what extent what you find kind of aligns with what is known by by today. So how your research compares to the same topic in different parts of the world?
Yeah, that's another really good question. So I would love to repeat this analysis on other countries. There's a lack of this really great survey data, right, that LIK provides, so it limits our ability to look at this everywhere. But I think there are important differences that would arise if we did look at it. And so there are things like the ethnic diversity in Kyrgyzstan, the level of democratic accountability and transparency that can affect the way that these projects then translate into different political and social dynamics. So down the line, I would love to, have an LIK Kazakhstan or an LIK LIU Uzbekistan, so we could really look to see, how do these different contextual factors change this relationship. But for now, right, we have this Kyrgyzstan data. So the best I think we can do is think through, okay, is there variation at the local level that can help us solve these questions? So if we look at different areas that have different levels of ethnic diversity or economic development, how does those shape this relationship? But definitely in the future, I would love to look at this cross-nationally. The Belt and Road Initiative, right, affects a lot of countries. And so it would be really interesting to see what the differences are. Oh, got a couple more.
Thank you, Marika. My question is about whether from your data you're able to disaggregate the impact of different kinds of BRI projects and the extent to which those impact the civic participation findings. Because the map you showed sort of the BRI projects put an emphasis on those sort of infrastructure projects, roads and so forth, but notoriously very often the benefits of which bypass the communities immediately surrounding those projects. And certainly work on the anthropology of roads in other places sort of suggests that there can be this bypassing effect that actually local communities don't necessarily benefit from infrastructure in their immediate surroundings. I wonder if you could comment a little bit on the nature of the BRI projects that you looked at in this case and whether there's any differentiation by project. Thank you.
Should we go to the next question, then I can answer them together, or should I answer that one now?
Second question upcoming.
Yeah, thanks. Just turn on the mic. So from what I understand from literature on BRI, of course, there is some responsiveness to this criticism that mostly imported Chinese workers are coming in, and that this is one big source of contention in communities that sort of BRI projects have responded to this. So have you ever looked at data further than 2016 and started to notice that there is a change in attitudes to BRI projects? Because yeah, I think it was 2013 to 2016 was your initial time frame. Thank you.
Yeah, okay, great. So yeah, starting with the first one on looking at the different projects. So yeah, we have these different road projects that have different scales in terms of how much money was committed, how big the roads are, how many workers are coming to work on it. And so I think, yeah, disaggregating it and looking to see what the different effects of that would be really important. For now, we just have sort of the broader exposure. And then one thing we're doing to get at this sort of, how are the local communities actually impacted by these roads versus, the sort of broader impacts is looking at these different distance metrics. And so we actually see some interesting differentiation in our results, which are presented in the paper, which show that, if you look at the sort of hyperlocal 10-kilometer level, those effects, they often are similar, but differ in some key ways than in the sort of wider distance expanse, which sort of gives us some insights into how is this affecting people, right near the roads or a little bit further out, which is allowing us to see how the different effects of these across these projects and the scale of them. And then, yeah, and the responses to, so yeah, it's true that there have been some responses in terms of having more localized workforces and taking in more local input when deciding how to carry out these projects in terms of, environmental factors and local community needs. So it would be really interesting to see sort of what are the long-term effects of these projects and how has that changed over time. And the LIK survey data does give us really great way to look at that. We haven't quite looked at the waves beyond, just because most of the projects in Kyrgyzstan were occurring between 2013 and 2016. But I think using like the 2019 waves and future waves would be a really good way to see what the long-term impacts of the BRI are.
Thank you, Marika. I think it's very interesting. Wishing you success in continuing your research, which is promising and many years ahead. Now I would like to move to our third speaker, who's co-authored by Marika as well. So both research are done jointly. And Pengshan Pan is from University of Pittsburgh, presenting joint work on promises and disparities or divisions regarding the gold mining Kumtor in Kyrgyzstan. Just before it gets ready, maybe for the audience, for those who are maybe first time in Kyrgyzstan, Kumtor gold mining is definitely a big part of Kyrgyz economy. It was nationalized a few years ago, and before it was indeed big in terms of economic contribution as well as employment. So in that respect, it's quite interesting in what extent it had local effects on communities by work by Pengshan.
Sorry. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for this chance. Thank you for Damir for inviting. Finally made you here, and I'm very excited about this conference because I'm using this Life in Kyrgyzstan data survey like every day. I'm using this Life in Kyrgyzstan data every day, so I'm very excited. This is like part of my life. So today I'm talking about gold. Everybody loves gold. Gold may not bring you happiness. It may bring your community divided. And gold is a very important thing in Kyrgyzstan. So here I'm using the evidence of Kyrgyzstan copper mine to tell how the gold investment causes your community divided. So the research question is, why does the economic growth of massive resource investment in developing countries generate local controversy? So I use a case study of Kumtor mining in Kyrgyzstan, which is a dominant natural resource project. I use the geolocated data of life in Kyrgyzstan, which is I use a 5-year household panel survey. The key finding is here. The Kumtor mining operates leads to higher wage, social benefits for mining workers. It raises inequality and polarization in the community, and it increases trust in local leaders among mining workers. But for the non-mining sector families, there's no spillover effect from the Kumtor mining. And other minings, there's no such strong disparity, so the ownership doesn't matter here. So let's look close to Kumtor Mining. It's the largest company in Kyrgyzstan. It's Canadian. It used to be Canadian owned. So I use the data in the Canadian owned time and has a very significant impact, about 10% of employment, about 12% of GDP. And the use old ownership structure. The Canadian Central holds 100% of interest, but the state-owned holds 32% share in Centura. So, but there are like very frequent protests related to Kumtor mining. There are 10 major protests in last 15 years, and 2 like nationwide uprising are related to Kumtor. So, but why, like, there's like protests is there mistreatment of workers. My research found not necessarily. If the higher, the main question is if the higher salary is getting paid to them, why there's local resistance? So the key finding here is like the uneven revenue distribution of mine leads to a division between the mining sector who is benefited and the local community who is excluded. So it increases. Hello. So it increases polarization, which is beneficiaries of mining industry and state elites, and the victim as local residents and the local community. So the mechanism is like a higher, like large revenue, but highly centralized fiscal system. So which causes inequality distribution to the local people, local community. So higher welfare of miners, why does the ownership really matters? Some literature talks about it is because the foreign ownership has higher labor demand, capital reserve, and prioritizing workers' welfare, less likely to give them to local, but my research found this is not the case. And also, but most of the cases because some firm-specific attributes matters, the industry, the revenue, the size of the firm, the parent countries, and also the institution matters most, like mining workers may get more rent from the company. So why there's lower trust for the miners in local leaders? So there's 2 groups. One is the state mining sector. State elites and mining workers benefit directly from the mine wells through state ownership and revenue, and reduces trust to local leaders by mining workers. And also another group is local and non-mining sector. The local communities benefit indirectly from the mining wells through the partial tax and the local spending. So it increases trust in local leaders by non-mining sectors, and the villagers are mobilized by like the local community leaders to against the mine. So I want to test 2 hypotheses using the data here. One is the welfare effect. Another is the trust effect. So for the mining workers, the higher income and social welfare at Kumtor within 100 miles. But the non-mining workers and the miners in other miles, there's no significant welfare difference. And also for the mining workers, there's low trust in local leaders within Kumtor region. But for the non-mining workers and the miners in other mines, there's no significant and higher trust in local leaders. So the data used in Live Kyrgyzstan from 2010 and to 2016, and I use geolocated data. So this is like the tons, the mining tons in the household survey, and in the red dots is where the Kumtor is, and so the gray circles are all the tons in the Live in Kyrgyzstan household survey. So in this map, in this graph, you can directly see a very brave, have very brave impression about how the Kumtor increases wages. So the x-axis is the driving hours from the household homes to the Kumtor mining, and the y-axis that is the income of these workers. So the black dots are mining workers, and the gray dots are manufacturing workers. You can see from this graph that when they live very close to Kumtor, the mining workers' income is much higher than the manufacturing workers, but not the case when they live further. So here is my regression equation. So the dependent variable is the wage and monthly and hourly trusting local authority, and dummy variables of written contract and job training, social security. And the independent variable is like if they live in 100 miles of the Kumtor minings, and I control everything because the households, it's a panel survey. And also I replace the mining dummy variable as the non-mining family workers and like manufacturing and agricultural workers in the survey. So here is the results. So I found the welfare effect is positive for the miners. When the miners live within 100 miles of Kumtor, they have higher welfare, but their trust to local leaders is lower. Is lower, but which only valid within the 100 miles of the Kumtor mining sample, but not other even domestic or also other non-mining non-Kumtor international mining companies. So there's some discussions, and people always ask the questions. So mother mines, foreign mines, domestic mines, and mixed mines, and Chinese oil mines, doesn't matter like Kumtor. Kumtor is uniquely pronounced, and ownership doesn't matter, so which means ownership doesn't matter. So I also use alternative dependent variables, which is I translate between monthly and hourly wages, which are all consistent. So Kumtor is higher in both monthly and hourly wages, but other mines only has higher monthly wages, but they work longer, which means their hourly wages is lower. So I also replace income as contract, permanent contract, training, social security. Kumtor also getting higher for the mining workers. So in considering the selection migration, people always think maybe like more capable people move to Kumtor, and so which makes them different from like the other people, like because they are more capable, so they make more money. But I use propensity score matching to match the same education and the same like background, and also I checked only use like people indigenous born, and I found that like most of the people hired by Kumtor is like the indigenous, they born around this region. They're not like the migrants from the other places. And also I checked the exogenous shock. When the prices goes higher, when the gold prices get higher, like the income of Kumtor miners getting higher, and I use the lag effect of gold price, and 1 and 2 years, they're both consistent. So here I also do the marginal effect, which means, so the general, this graph means like when they live, when the mining workers live very closing and to Kumtor, the income is getting higher, and the effect of Kumtor is high, and also the non-mining is negative, and the trust effect is opposite as the income effect. So the conclusion is not large natural resource endowments in weak states can form like distinct interest groups. One is mining workers, and another is non-mining sectors. Mining workers, despite their high wage and better social benefits, and they have like lower trust to the local authority, local leaders, and non-mining workers are opposite. So I also checked there's same impact on high skill and low skill workers, and only 10% of people here are migrants, and most of the ethnicity in Kumtor are Kyrgyz ethnicity. And some people are also ask about the protest because of the data limitation. So there will be like a separate project. So I'm not looking at the protest here. So this is all I have, and I also have other tables. If you are interested, I can provide you. Thank you so much, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Pengshan. I think we have a lot. Just waiting for make sure that my sound is not too loud. Great work, Pengshan. I think it's a lot of data work, as I see, done using most waves of the Leica data and using geolocation information to make this attributable. I have a few questions. If the audience has, we can start here, but there are definitely questions from local perspective. For example, the employment effect, as far as we know from Kumtor gold mine, was possibly not as large as one would expect. I think it's about 2,000 or so people hired, in the mine, but definitely other connected businesses also hire a lot of people, so a lot of spillover effects, definitely. But the most curious thing is about this effect of workers not trusting local leaders. I was not entirely sure how that connection works, why mining workers should trust less or more to local leaders, in what extent local leaders are connected to Kumtor gold mine. That was something not clear to me. But the other thing is about this local development fund, right? Kumtor mining would give money to oblast level fund that is to be exactly what you're researching, spend money for local development. And I think we didn't see much about it. I assume you already did some research about it, but the whole mechanism, how Kumtor money goes to local population, is probably through that fund. And maybe that is something you have information and you can share. But one employment effect, local development funds, and connection of mining workers to local leaders in terms of trust. Maybe we can start questions from here as well.
Thank you for your interesting presentation. First of all, can you also pinpoint where this mine is? I think you showed the map, but describe the locality a little bit better. And my other question, like as you said, the conflicts were ongoing, kind of. My question is, if you had a chance actually to look at the response of the local authorities to the conflicts, protests, how did they try to mitigate it? Thank you.
Yeah, can I just? I'm sorry, I can not. But they have their home here, so but sometimes they work in the mining pits, and sometimes they live at home. So what I want to say is like so why there are lower trust to the local leaders, because the money is from the company, from central, from Bishkek, and so they live together, they stay together, and they have like housing there, the company housing there, they live there, and the children goes to school like related to company. So I really so they're really disengaged with the local community. And so they are a group, like Kumtor is a group of people, and the non-Kumtor people is another group of people. So in this region, so it's kind of causes more polarization about how they think everything here. So like some like connected Kumtar people I know, like their kids go to Canada, and but still like local people are really like poor, but if they are not engaged with the mining industry here. So also the local development fund, I tried to run the data there. So, but the result is not very significant. It's not very strong. So I evaluate like how much local funds can really causes like maybe 1 year, 2 years later, like the welfare increase of the non-mining community around this data set. But I didn't find very good results. So I didn't put into the paper, but I did this kind of research, and maybe my technique is a little bit different, but I just like interact with the local fund. But the gold price definitely can cause a lot of like more like inequality in this region. Yeah. So what else?
About the response of the local authorities to these ongoing protests. So have they tried to do anything? How they try to mitigate that? Because it's obviously it's ongoing issue.
Yes.
So any forms of mitigation which you could observe during your study?
I think maybe still like the non-mining communities, they need to get more benefits from the wealth, and the wealth maybe need to be more transparent, and also how they manage the revenue from the company, not like directly goes to the center, goes to Bishkek, and the local people cannot, how the local people get the money is the money go to the center first, and the center gives the development fund, and maybe the company also like compensate a little bit, but I'm not sure if companies should take the responsibility or the government should take responsibility. It's like another issue. It's not my, but definitely like also like politicians kind of mobilize the people who live there but who didn't get like the money from the company, and so like the local politicians and also the politicians from center to against the mine because they didn't get enough like compensate from the company or the government. Yeah.
So can I just, so do you mean that local politicians organized local communities or sort of driving local communities against the kind of the mine? Is it what you
I
came
think
to the
informal
conclusion?
leaders, like
Yeah.
the informal leaders, and some politicians, because Kyrgyzstan is more democratic country, so it's like not like the it's more legislative sometimes, not like executive branch or something like that, but some like senators or something like that, but they involved in the mobilization or something like that, and also like the local like village leaders or something like that. This is like I get from the data, but I didn't do like the interviews there, so that is also what I need to do in the future, and I should do like more interviews. This is just from the data.
I mean, it will be really interesting to see if it is actually a grassroots protest where local people don't like it and try to sort of express themselves, or is it an organized by the local authorities? I think it's a different, discourses depending where is it coming from. It's just a comment.
Yes. Also, but getting the protest data is really hard. Like know who is protesting, who is organizing the protesting. It's really hard, and yeah, it's also very challenging part. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Pengshan. I would maybe suggest in your slides, you may update about the ownership status. Currently, as you know, the Kumtor mine was nationalized. And I think now we have much less information what's going on in terms of production and revenues and exports. So in that respect, it has implications on your research as well, in what extent this local development fund or regional development fund is still in place, because it affects not only workers, but also local communities in the past. As far as we know, there is not much evidence on how this development funds from mining did work so far, but it's definitely a part of the protests that you mentioned about. So in that respect, maybe field work helps you to clarify, but definitely slides needs to be updated in terms of ownership status as it is now.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I would definitely do that. And thank you for the suggestion. I'm also waiting for the new wave of data, and because right now it's 2019 data is the latest data, and so I cannot see the effect of the after the nationalization. Yeah, if the new data comes in, I will definitely. Yeah. Thank you.
I would like to thank all our three speakers. I think it's very interesting topics around entrepreneurship and around gold mining and regional investment initiatives and what extent it affects people. Yeah, in this conference, we speak about people a lot. Just to say that we now have a break, quite short break, about 20 minutes before next session start. Just also mention that at the evening we have a reception, and you are all invited to come and join and have more interaction with each other. We will have keynote speaker delivered by Michelle, who is in this room with us today. But overall, thank you for attending this session. Once again, thanks for the speakers. Good luck with your continuation of your research. And if you have questions that you didn't ask, please feel free to approach the speakers and ask your questions in person. Thank you very much. Enjoy your coffee.